Night swallowed the rolling hills of the Yorkshire dales, turning every tree and stone into silhouettes beneath a bruised purple sky. The only sound was the insistent hum of the river wharf, swollen from spring rain, its waters twisting like some black serpent beneath the cliffs. Then, gunshots tore through the quiet. Three figures burst from the darkness, shadows thrown long by a pair of headlights slashing the gloom. The trio barely hesitated before leaping off the embankment, one after another, disappearing into the icy, churning river below. They didn't jump for glory. They jumped to survive. What drove them to that desperate act started, as all the worst stories do, with something so small it seemed innocent. An abandoned horse shivering on the edge of the world. The night faded. Sunlight spilled like honey over the fields, painting the moors in gold and green. Officer Isla Harper was behind the wheel of her patrol car, window cracked, the scent of dew and wildflowers drifting in. The village was still waking up. No other cars, no walkers, just the crunch of gravel as she rolled down an empty country lane. Isla was on her last call before a rare day off, but there was something peaceful about these early hours that made her slow down, breathing in the calm. Then she saw it. Standing alone in the middle of a fallow field was a thoroughbred colt. Spindly legs, black coat shining, ribs showing beneath matted fur. The animal was trembling, eyes wild, breath steaming in the cool air. Isla's first instinct was pity. An abandoned foal, lost or dumped, terrified and hungry. But as she stepped from her car and moved closer, keeping her voice low and her hands steady, that empathy twisted into something sharper. On the colt's left shoulder, dark against the gleaming black hide, was a burn, a deliberate, ugly mark. Not an accident, not a scuffle with barbed wire. The shape was precise, branded into the skin, a symbol Isla didn't recognize, but knew immediately was evidence. Someone did this, she thought, jaw clenching. Someone wanted to send a message. She crouched, boots sinking into the damp earth. The horse's whole body shook, muscles tensed to bolt, but it didn't run. Isla spoke softly, murmuring reassurances, but her other hand was already on her radio. "Dispatch, this is Harper. I've got a situation out by Wharf Lane. Abandoned colt, showing signs of abuse, requesting animal rescue and forensics on site." A crow shrieked in the hedgerow, flapping into the sky. Isla took off her jacket, draping it over the colt's back, wincing as the animal flinched. She examined the mark, letters, maybe, or a crest, still blistered and raw. Forensics would need photos, so she snapped a few with her phone, zooming in on the edges. There was something familiar about the pattern. An A, or was it an M? Isla's mind ticked over, searching memories of farm raids, rural crimes, old family brands. Suddenly, the field wasn't empty anymore. A Range Rover crawled out of the shadows, headlights cutting through the fog. Isla's heartbeat stuttered. She stood, subtly positioning herself between the horse and the oncoming vehicle. The car stopped. The engine idled. The window stayed up, glass reflecting nothing but her own tense face. For a moment, the world held its breath. The driver's door opened. Out stepped a man, tall, dressed in city clothes, not a speck of mud on his polished shoes. His coat was tailored, his watch expensive, but he moved with practiced care, picking his way across the field without a single misstep. Isla sized him up as he approached, one hand instinctively drifting toward her sidearm. He smiled, a sharp, chilly thing that didn't reach his eyes. "Officer," he said, voice smooth as silk, "is everything all right here? Beautiful animal, isn't it?" Isla's gut screamed a warning. No local would dress like that for a walk in the mud. She kept her voice even. "We're investigating an abandoned colt, sir. Do you know anything about this animal?" He hesitated, glancing at the burn mark. "Strange. Not my area, I'm afraid. But you know, horses wander off all the time out here. Perhaps it's just gotten lost from one of the big stables." "Do you know its name?" Isla pressed, watching him closely. The man smiled again, too quick, too practiced. Can't say I do, but if you're looking for someone to take care of it, he reached into his pocket, produced a crisp wad of notes, and held them out. I'd be happy to facilitate things. No need for paperwork, right? Let's not make a fuss over a stray horse. The bribe was as clear as day. Isla felt anger spark behind her calm facade. I don't think that's how we do things, sir, she said, her tone flat. He shrugged, tucking the cash away with a little sigh. Your loss. Some problems are best handled quietly. Then he turned, walked back to his car, leaving muddy prints on the grass. He drove off, but in the rearview mirror, Isla saw his eyes flick back to her, cold and calculating. The field was quiet again, but the sense of danger lingered. Isla stroked the colt's neck, feeling the tension in its muscles match her own. This wasn't just neglect. This was something else. Something organized, deliberate, and dangerous. The burn mark was a warning, a clue, and a threat, all at once. Behind her, the Range Rover's headlights blinked from the edge of the trees, waiting, watching. Isla pulled the colt closer, heart pounding. She knew, in that moment, that she'd stumbled into the first chapter of something far bigger than she'd ever faced before. And somewhere downriver, under that darkening sky, 3 shadows would soon leap for their lives, gunshots echoing behind them. The colt's flanks still trembled, heat from the angry brand rising into the cool morning air. Isla's hand stayed on the animal's shoulder, fingers splayed, steady, but her mind raced. Who was that man? No local accent, no farmer's patience. The way he'd flashed that cash, too confident, too slick. Animal rescue wouldn't arrive for at least 20 minutes. Isla scanned the field, gaze sharp. The Range Rover had turned back onto the lane, but the taillights slowed, lingering at the corner. He was watching her, waiting. The colt shifted, nostrils flaring. Isla whispered, "It's okay, boy. You're safe now." Though a flicker of doubt curled in her stomach. She forced herself to breathe, drawing on a well of training and resolve built from years of country policing. De-escalate, document, survive. Her radio crackled. Unit 14, report status on Wharf Lane call. Unit 14, on scene, requesting backup, Isla replied, eyes never leaving the horizon. Possible witness just left in a dark Range Rover. Partial plate, Victor Zulu 78, heading north. Please run it, urgent. Copy that. 14. Wind rustled through the grass. Isla took another slow look at the colt's injury. The brand was raw, the skin angry, scabbed around the edges. She tried to make out the letters. A, maybe an M, then an E. Was it a family crest? A code? Some farm syndicate's warning? Her memory ticked through local scandals, old land disputes, rural legends whispered at the pub. Nothing fit. Suddenly, gravel crunched. Isla's head snapped up. The Range Rover was back, gliding up the lane, then stopping, engine rumbling low. Her breath caught. No backup yet, no weapon drawn. Stay calm. The stranger emerged, this time with gloves. He walked right up to the wire fence, shoes still miraculously clean. You're making this more complicated than it needs to be, officer, he said, voice still polite, but colder now. Isla straightened. Why are you back? This is a crime scene. He looked past her, eyes calculating, then forced a neighborly smile. I was just thinking about our little situation and thought maybe we could come to an understanding. Isla's mind flashed. Bribery again? Threats? She kept her stance wide, weight balanced. If you have information about this colt, now's the time to share it. He ignored her, gaze moving to the colt. That's a fine animal. It'd be a shame if it got lost in the system. So many abandoned horses end up in the wrong hands. Are you threatening me? Isla's tone was ice. The colt nickered, sensing her agitation. A tiny smirk played on the man's lips. I'm just saying, maybe let this one go. There are bigger things at play here. You don't want to be in the way when they come looking. They? Isla pressed, pulse spiking. Who's they? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Take the money. close the case. You're in over your head. Isla's jaw locked. This is police business. Leave, or I'll charge you with interfering in an investigation. For a moment, the stranger's eyes hardened. Then he turned, too quickly, too quietly, and strode back to the car, tossing a final glance over his shoulder. Don't say I didn't warn you. The Range Rover peeled away, tires spinning on gravel. Isla watched him go, anger boiling in her chest. She pulled out her phone and took another round of photos. The colt, the muddy prints, the tracks left by those polished shoes. The colt pressed its head into her chest, seeking comfort. Isla swallowed. You're safe, she repeated, but her voice shook. Why did she feel like prey? A car engine approached, softer this time. Animal rescue, an old green van, bounced up the lane. Isla exhaled. The driver, a no-nonsense woman named Moira, took one look at the colt and whistled. Someone's been busy. You get a look at who did this? I did, Isla said, voice tight. He tried to buy my silence. Came back a second time to threaten me. Moira frowned. I'll get him loaded. You want the vet to come straight to the station? Yes, and can you call in for extra security? I think we've walked into something organized. As Moira gently coaxed the colt into the trailer, Isla ran over everything again. The brand, the threat, the bribe. None of it felt like desperation. This was business. The kind of business that left bodies in fields. Before the van pulled away, Isla leaned in. If anyone comes asking for this horse, don't say a word. Call me, day or night. Moira nodded, eyes worried. You be careful, Isla. The van drove off, dust rising behind. Isla stood in the empty field, the sun climbing higher, and for the first time in her career, she felt a chill that had nothing to do with the English weather. She turned back to her car, then froze. Parked down the road, hidden partially by the hedges, the Range Rover waited. The driver was on the phone, his eyes flicking up to meet hers, even at a distance. Isla's heart hammered. She grabbed her radio. Dispatch, this is Harper. I need urgent surveillance. Suspect vehicle, loitering. Possible organized crime link, please advise. The Range Rover suddenly sped away, vanishing over the hill. Isla drove after him, but by the time she reached the turnoff, the road was empty. Only tire marks and a faint smell of burning rubber remained. She pulled over, hands shaking. What would you do? Accept the bribe, close the case, and keep your head down. Or chase the truth, no matter where it led. Isla Harper already knew her answer, even if it scared her. She reached for her phone and dialed the number for the county's organized crime unit. Detective Sloan speaking. This is PC Isla Harper, Skipton Patrol. I need to talk to you now. It's about an abandoned colt, a burn mark, and a man in a black Range Rover who thinks he owns the countryside. There was a pause. Then Sloane's voice dropped. Where are you? In the middle of nowhere, Isla admitted, and I think I just made myself a target. Behind her, hidden somewhere in the waving fields, a pair of binoculars flashed in the sunlight, then disappeared. As Isla drove back toward the village, every shadow felt longer. The game had begun. And she was already being watched. Sunlight had fully claimed the hills by the time Isla's patrol car pulled into the Skipton Veterinary Clinic. The building itself was a squat brick affair with faded green trim and a swinging sign that squeaked in the morning breeze. Isla stepped out, her boots still caked in field mud, and took a second to steady herself. She scanned the parking lot for any sign of the black Range Rover, but it was mercifully empty, just the battered animal rescue van and Moira already unloading the trembling colt. Inside, the air buzzed with the low hum of fluorescent lights and the antiseptic tang of disinfectant. The reception area was quiet, but through a glass partition, Isla spotted Dr. Priya Ahuja, the clinic's senior vet, scrubbing in at the back sink. Priya glanced up, her eyes immediately sharpening at the sight of the colt limping in behind Moira. Who did this to him? Priya's question cut off as she stepped forward, her practiced hands immediately moving to the animal's muzzle, soothing with gentle pressure. He's terrified. And this mark, Isla nodded, phone already out to show Priya the photos she'd snapped in the field. That's what I wanted you to see. It's not an accident. Whoever branded him did it on purpose. Have you seen anything like it? Priya shook her head, worry creasing her brow. That's a professional job. Ranchers here use standard ID marks, but this is almost like a family crest. It's too intricate for quick cattle rustling. And look, see these edges? They held the iron long enough for a burn, but not enough for a deep scar. Almost like they wanted it to be noticed, but not ruin the animal. The word sent a chill through Isla. So it's a message. Or a warning, Priya replied quietly. As Moira steadied the colt, Priya began her examination. She worked methodically, checking for other wounds, monitoring the colt's breathing, jotting notes on a tablet. He's lucky. Aside from the dehydration and stress, the rest of him is healthy. But this brand, Isla, I'd send this to the police database. There are rumors, old scandals, about families using private marks to signal ownership, not just over animals, but bloodlines. Heritage. Sometimes crime. Isla's phone buzzed. A text from dispatch. The Range Rover's partial plate came back registered to an offshore holding impossible to trace directly. Typical, Isla thought, anxiety curling tighter. She snapped a close-up of the brand under Priya's bright examination light. Now it was clearer. AME, stylized, the letters entwined in a flourish she couldn't quite place. She took a moment, scrolling through mental files, stories from her grandfather about old Yorkshire families, rumors of feuds and fortunes built on secrets, the Ashworths, the Manor estates, centuries of wealth, horse breeding, races at Ascot, and then, decades ago, a scandal that had nearly burned their name out of the county. Priya caught Isla's faraway look. You recognize it? Isla hesitated. Maybe. I think this is connected to the Ashworth Manor estates. There was a case, years back. Family vanished. Their property tied up in the courts. No one ever said what really happened. Priya frowned. Wasn't there something about their horses? Winning at Royal Ascot, then nothing. Papers said they went bankrupt, but everyone whispered about something darker. Isla nodded. She couldn't shake the feeling that every piece of this, burn mark, threats, stranger in the Range Rover, pointed to a legacy someone would kill to protect. A nurse in scrubs knocked on the door, holding a yellowed manila folder. Dr. Ahuja, there's an old file here, pulled from the archives, marked Ashworth. Thought you might want to see it. Priya took the folder, curiosity flaring. She flipped through clippings, newspaper headlines about the Ashworth family, their legendary racehorses, a fortune lost in a single night, whispers of disappearances. There was even a grainy photo of a colt almost identical to the one now standing in the clinic, branded with the same AME. Isla scanned the documents. One headline screamed, Ashworth family vanishes, debts or foul play. Another, years older, celebrated their Royal Ascot victory with a black stallion bearing that same mark. Suddenly, Isla's phone vibrated. Detective Sloane. She answered in a low voice. Harper here? Your Range Rover friend has a record of parking near old Ashworth sites. He's tied to a private security firm linked to several disappearances. Stay sharp, Isla. And don't let that colt out of your sight. A shiver ran down her spine. Copy that. The brand matches Ashworth horses. I'll send you photos. Moira, standing nearby, caught the tension. What does all this mean, Isla? It means someone is cleaning up loose ends. The Ashworth family didn't just disappear. They were erased. And this colt, with that brand, is evidence of something they want buried. At that moment, a sudden noise jolted everyone, a loud crash from the back of the clinic, followed by frantic barking. Isla and Priya rushed toward the sound, nerves on edge. They burst into the corridor just in time to see two masked figures sprinting down the back hallway. One carried a horse lead, the other waved a canister of pepper spray at the vet tech trying to block their path. Isla shouted, Stop! Police! But the attackers didn't even slow. They shoved through the fire exit, dragging the colt in a panicked, stumbling run. Moira cried out. Priya tried to follow, coughing from the pepper spray. Isla bolted outside, scanning for the escape vehicle. She glimpsed the Range Rover, back again, engine revving as the rear doors swung open. The kidnappers hustled the Colt inside, slammed the doors, and the car peeled away, spitting gravel and dust, vanishing up the lane before Isla could reach her patrol car. She cursed, breath burning in her lungs. The clinic's security camera pointed right at the lot. Maybe, just maybe, it caught the faces of the men, or the plate, or something else that could break the case wide open. Inside, Priya dabbed her eyes, voice tight with frustration. This wasn't random, Isla. They came for that horse specifically. Someone knew exactly where he'd be, and exactly how to get in and out. Who did you talk to about bringing him here? Isla replayed the morning in her mind. The threat, the bribe, the Range Rover always just out of sight. No one outside official channels, I swear, but someone's leaking information, someone close. Moira's hands shook as she dialed the police. If they can just walk in, what do we do next? Isla looked at her, resolve hardening. We get the footage, we find out who's pulling the strings, and we make damn sure they know we're not just another loose end. She grabbed a flash drive from the desk, downloading the security footage herself, not trusting anyone else. As the progress bar ticked up, she glanced out the window. The fields looked innocent again, green, endless, dotted with sheep. But now, Isla understood. Beneath that calm, old secrets festered, families vanished. Evidence was stolen, not by chance, but by design. Priya joined her, voice low. If you're right, this goes deeper than we thought. The Ashworths, the racehorses, families wiped out. What are you going to do? Isla slipped the flash drive into her pocket, meeting Priya's gaze. Whatever it takes, she said. Whoever's hunting these horses, and the families who own them, I'm going to find out why. And I'm going to stop them. Somewhere, far down the road, the Range Rover vanished into the trees. The Colt's frightened eyes the last thing Isla saw. The game had changed. The stakes were higher. But so was her determination. Isla watched the security footage download, the spinning icon on the monitor ticking away the seconds while her heart hammered faster. Each frame might be the key, but with every moment, the Range Rover was getting further away. The Colt slipping deeper into the hands of professionals who knew how to make evidence disappear. The vet clinic's staff huddled in the break room, dazed and shaken. Moira nursed a bruised wrist. Priya dabbed her watering eyes, and the receptionist muttered about quitting after this shift. Isla forced herself to be calm, listening to the ambient sounds, moaning animals, ringing phones. The distant wail of a siren that signaled backup was finally on its way. Her phone vibrated again. Sloan, Isla snatched it up. Tell me you got something, she said, voice low, eyes scanning the parking lot. We traced a phone call placed from a disposable cell 2 miles from your location just before the attack, Sloan replied. It's a burner, but it pinged off a tower that covers the entire Ashworth property line? Isla's jaw clenched. They're tracking every move. You need to get somewhere safe, Sloan insisted. This isn't just about a missing horse, Isla. These people run surveillance like pros. If they want to erase you, they will. The words hung in the air, cold as steel. She hung up and slipped into the small office where the clinic kept their files. She wanted a quiet space to think. But as she turned on the computer to check the footage, her email pinged. A single new message, no subject. Isla opened it with a frown. The screen filled with a blurry photo of her own house. Her front porch, her faded red mailbox, the window where she always left the lamp on for her late-night shifts. The message, stay away, there won't be a second warning. For a moment, Isla's vision narrowed, her breath coming short. She pressed her fists to her eyes. No, she thought. Not now. Not fear. Not panic. Not when people and animals were depending on her. She dialed her neighbor, Mrs. Cartwright, who lived across the street. Check the porch, Isla said, voice barely above a whisper. Make sure everything's locked, and don't open the door to anyone. Mrs. Cartwright, feisty even in her 70s, didn't argue. I'll call the boys. They'll keep an eye out. Isla ended the call, hands trembling, and forced herself to focus on the security footage. She watched the two masked men rush in, one limping, the other tall and fast, moving with the practiced confidence of military training. She paused the video on their faces as they briefly glanced up at the camera. Eyes obscured, but the tall one wore a distinctive signet ring, a glint of silver against black gloves. She made note of it. "Come on, give me something." In another frame, just before they fled, she caught a detail, a patch on the taller man's jacket, an embroidered crest. Zooming in, Isla's heart skipped. It was the same AME symbol as the Colt's brand. So they're not just erasing the past, she realized. They're wearing it like a badge. Police arrived, lights flashing, uniforms flooding the clinic. Isla stepped outside for air, forcing herself to breathe, watching as they cordoned off the area and began collecting statements. She handed the flash drive to the detective in charge, spelling out her suspicions. This wasn't a random act, but a professional job, a coordinated team cleaning up something much bigger than a horse. One of the officers brought over a battered cell phone, found discarded behind the clinic. Isla took it, gloved up, and scrolled through the call history. Only one number was saved, under a single initial. C. She copied it and texted it to Sloan. "See what you can pull from this. Whoever C is, he's orchestrating everything." Rain started to spit, dotting the windows, making the air smell of wet pavement and summer grass. Isla's phone rang again, a number she didn't recognize. She answered, cautious. "Hello?" Static, then a digitally disguised voice. "You were warned." "Who is this?" A pause, then. "You've been watched for days. You have no idea what you're up against. Walk away, Isla. Or we'll come for your family next." The call cut off. Isla's hands went cold. She tried to call back, blocked. A uniformed officer jogged over. "Ma'am, you'll want to see this." He led her to the back fence, where the kidnappers had escaped. Stuck in the mud was a broken cufflink, gleaming with the same stylized AME initials. Isla pocketed it, a small satisfaction in a world that seemed suddenly vast and menacing. Her car was parked nearby, windshield spattered with rain. As Isla climbed in, she checked the mirrors. No Range Rover, no suspicious cars, just the endless rolling green. She knew it was an illusion. Somewhere, eyes were on her. Somewhere, the people who erased the Ashworth family were already calculating her next move. She drove to the edge of the Yorkshire countryside, road winding through old stone walls and sheep meadows. She called Priya and Moira, checked on their safety, then punched in Sloane's number again. "Anything?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're close to tracing the number from that burner. It's moved twice since the call. And Isla, be careful. I just got word that 2 more families tied to Ashworth have reported threats in the last month. This is bigger than just you." "I know," Isla said, looking out at the gray sky, the drizzle turning to rain. "I need to see the manor. The answers are there. And if there's a leak in our department, I'm not saying a word about it on the radio." "Agreed. Go dark. Text only." She clicked off, then parked on the shoulder of a narrow lane and thought through her next move. If they knew her home, her routine, her weaknesses, she couldn't trust anyone, not even in uniform. Someone was watching the watchers, feeding information up the chain. She turned on her car's dash cam just in case and sent Mrs. Cartwright a code phrase they'd agreed on years ago. "Feed the cat." It meant, stay in, don't answer the door, get the neighbors watching. Her phone buzzed, a new text from an unknown number. "You still don't get it. You're not the first. Others have disappeared for less." A chill crept over her, but Isla forced herself to keep moving. She reviewed her case notes, a colt with a criminal brand, a family vanished, a string of disappearances swept under the rug by people with military discipline and bottomless resources. She pulled up old news archives, scrolling through headlines. Ashworth Manor sold at auction. Estate embroiled in legal battle. Police investigate disappearances. Each article connected by a single thread. Silence, money, power. And every few years, another tragedy, another family erased from the record. A notification pinged on her laptop. CCTV footage from a petrol station 3 miles from the clinic showed the Range Rover filling up. Isla zoomed in. The tall man flashed his signet ring to the cashier, who nodded and turned away. No one called the police. No one questioned the brand on the Colt, even as it neighed and stamped, terrified in the back. Inside her car, Isla shivered. It wasn't just surveillance. It was complicity. The whole system, banks, police, courts. Someone had hands everywhere. Her phone rang again, Sloane's voice urgent. The second call mentioned your address, Isla. You need to move, now. I'm not running. I'm not hiding. If they want to fight, they'll get one. A soft tap at her window made her jump. It was Moira, eyes wide, holding a piece of paper. She'd gotten a phone call. Her voice shaking, she handed over the note. We know you helped the officer. Keep quiet, or your son disappears next. Isla felt the threat like a knife under the ribs. She took Moira's hands, squeezed tight. Go home. Lock the doors. Don't answer to anyone but me or the police. Moira nodded, tears in her eyes. As the rain thickened, Isla made her decision. No more waiting for backup. No more playing by the rules. The Ashworth conspiracy wanted her scared and silent. Instead, she'd make herself impossible to ignore. She fired off a final text to Sloane. I'm heading to Ashworth Manor. If you don't hear from me in 2 hours, send everything you've got. The countryside rolled by in a blur, thunder rumbling in the distance. Behind her, headlights flashed. Once, twice, then vanished. Isla checked her pistol, her flashlight, the flash drive in her pocket. This was no longer a rescue mission. It was a manhunt. And for the first time, she realized she was as much a target as the Colt. The game was on. Rain slicked the winding country roads, blurring the lines between fields and sky. Isla's wipers struggled to keep up, the rhythmic thump a kind of metronome for her thoughts. She drove with headlights low, careful not to draw attention, every sense straining for the sound of another engine behind her. Shadows stretched across the countryside, broken only by the occasional flash of lightning illuminating ancient stone walls and wind-bent trees. The GPS signal faded in and out, but Isla didn't need it anymore. She'd been to Ashworth Manor once as a child, taken by her father for a charity garden fete. Back then, the estate had still been alive. Lawn parties, laughter, horses grazing in sunlit paddocks. Now, years later, the road was nearly impassable, overtaken by brambles and potholes. It felt like she was driving straight into a story best left untold. She slowed as the manor's iron gates appeared, barely hanging by rusty hinges. Someone had forced them open. One gate twisted off its post, paint flaking like dead skin. The driveway was a churned-up track of mud and weeds. She parked the car behind a tangle of hawthorn, out of sight, and stepped out, flashlight ready, phone on silent. The rain eased to a drizzle. Ashworth Manor loomed ahead, stone walls dark with moss, windows broken and blind, roof slumping under the weight of years. The gardens had become wild, thistles waist-high, rose bushes gone feral, the old fountain dry and choked with leaves. As Isla approached, her boots sank into soft ground. She could hear her own heartbeat, the slow drip of water from broken gutters, the distant cry of a night bird. She paused at the front steps. The sense of loss was almost physical, grief for a time she never really knew. And yet, beneath it, a flicker of anger. This place should have been alive, filled with voices and horses and hope. Instead, someone had let it rot and then tried to wipe every trace from history. She pressed on, checking the lock on the heavy oak door. It had been busted open, splintered around the latch. She hesitated, one last look behind her, nothing but rain and the hum of wind through trees. Inside, the air was cool and musty, thick with the scent of mold and old wood. Isla clicked on her flashlight, sweeping the beam across the grand foyer. Once, it must have been magnificent. Marble floors, a sweeping staircase, portraits on the walls. Now the marble was cracked, the paintings vandalized, the only movement a spider weaving between broken banisters. But something wasn't right. She crouched, inspecting the muddy footprints on the floor. Fresh, not yet dried, more than one pair. Someone had been here recently. Or maybe they were still here. She moved cautiously, stepping around a toppled table, mind racing with possibilities. Was this where the Ashworths had vanished? Was this where their secrets were buried? As she entered the drawing room, her flashlight caught a glint, metal, low to the ground. She stooped and found a set of tire tracks, narrow and deep, winding from a side door toward the collapsed stables. Recent, too, maybe just hours old. She followed them outside, her breath fogging in the cool air. The rain had stopped now, and the sky above was a low, rolling gray. Ashworth's stables were half ruined, the doors sagging, weeds pushing through stone foundations. Yet, there were more footprints in the mud. Isla bent down, careful, tracing the outline of a heavy boot. Not hers, not a child's. This was a man's stride, hurried, doubled back on itself. She pulled out her phone, snapping photos, sending Sloane a quick update. At the manor, fresh tire and boot prints. Place isn't abandoned, someone's using it. Before she could tuck her phone away, it buzzed. Sloane's reply was instant. Get out if you sense danger. We're tracing calls. Major activity near you. But Isla was done running. She edged around the stable's broken doors, flashlight cutting through shadows. Inside, the smell was worse. Old hay, rot, and something else. Something burnt. She moved from stall to stall, heart pounding, careful not to trip on loose boards. And then, on a shelf near the back wall, she found it. A row of security cameras, red LEDs, blinking in the dark. She nearly cursed aloud. Someone was watching this place, even now. She followed the wire bundle to a hidden battery pack. New, expensive, taped to the beams. She took out her phone, filmed the setup, then checked for any sign of recent footage storage. A portable hard drive, missing. Someone had taken the evidence but left the eyes in place, maybe as a warning. At that moment, a flash of movement outside caught her eye, a figure slipping between trees at the edge of the grounds. Isla ducked down, killing her flashlight. She pressed her back to the stable wall, breath coming in short bursts. Was it the tall man from the footage? Was it someone else? From the network? She couldn't risk a direct confrontation, not yet. She crept back into the shadows, counting her steps, scanning the overgrown garden for movement. Her pulse thudded in her ears, but she forced herself to focus. She needed proof, not just suspicion. She circled the manor's east wing, careful not to step on broken glass. She found a window pried open, tool marks fresh on the sill. She slipped inside and entered what must have once been the Ashworth's library. Bookshelves were mostly bare, except for a few moldy tomes. But the desk was littered with new papers, shipping manifests, vet reports, and a torn envelope marked with the AME crest. Her hands trembled as she flipped through them, names, dates, addresses, receipts for horse sales, some crossed out, others marked delivered. Then, a sharp click behind her, footsteps in the hallway. Isla froze, muscles tensed. The doorknob turned. She ducked behind the desk, heart pounding so hard it hurt. A beam of light swept the room, heavy breathing, a muttered curse. The person rifled through papers, yanked open drawers. A phone buzzed, and the intruder answered in a harsh whisper. No, she's not here. I'm telling you, there's nothing left. The cameras are still up. Yes, I'll wipe them. What do you mean she's coming here? Isla inched closer, trying to see the face. The voice was familiar, a local accent, someone who knew the estate. The man paced, frustration rising. No, I'm not staying all night. Fine, but you owe me, Charles. You hear me? You owe me. The call ended. The man stomped out, slamming the door. Isla's body sagged in relief. She waited, counted to 30, then slipped out and followed at a distance. She caught a glimpse of the man's profile as he ducked into a battered Land Rover, scruffy beard, scar on his cheek. She snapped a quick photo and watched as he gunned the engine, tearing off down the muddy lane. She took a shuddering breath, piecing it together. Someone was exploiting the manor for more than just a hiding place, laundering horses, scrubbing evidence, moving money, and lives through a network that reached much farther than Yorkshire. She returned to the stables, searching one last time. Near the back, Beneath a loose floorboard, she found a hidden compartment. Inside, a tiny surveillance device, still warm to the touch, its memory card missing. She pocketed it, eyes sweeping the ruined estate one final time. The manor was no longer a home. It was a crime scene, a nerve center for secrets too dangerous to leave unguarded. She turned back toward her car, the wind rising, thunder grumbling again on the horizon. Somewhere, in the growing dark, the hunters were closing in. But Isla Harper was done hiding. She had faces, names, a growing list of evidence. In a sense that this fight was far from over. She texted Sloane, "I'm coming back. They're still here, and they know I am too." As she drove away, she saw fresh headlights flicker in the rear view. Another car, following, or maybe just watching, waiting for her next move. The journey into darkness had begun, but Isla wasn't turning back. The drive back from Ashworth Manor felt endless. Every curve in the road, a new chance to spot those trailing headlights in her mirror. But as Isla approached the village, the rain finally stopped, leaving the air heavy and cold, the ground slick with mud. She didn't go home. She wouldn't risk leading anyone back to her street, not after that warning. Instead, she circled around, parking behind the abandoned dairy barn on the edge of town. Headlights off. She killed the engine and sat for a moment in the silence. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. It was exhaustion, nerves, anger, maybe a little hope, too. She had names, faces, evidence. She was getting closer. But closer to what? Was it justice? Or was it just the end of her own story? A motion sensor light flickered on by the barn. Isla stiffened, hand on her flashlight, other hand drifting toward her holstered weapon. Someone was here. She slid out of the car, moving low and careful along the building's wall. As she edged toward the entrance, she heard it. A shuffling sound, quiet but unmistakable. The soft thud of boots on straw. She risked a whisper. "Hello?" Silence. Then a tremulous voice replied, so faint it was almost lost in the wind. "Please, I'm not here to hurt anyone." She stepped into the barn, sweeping her light across the hay-strewn floor. There, crouched behind an old feed bin, was a boy, maybe 16 or 17, filthy, hair matted, cheeks hollowed from hunger and sleepless nights. He clutched a woolen blanket to his chest, eyes wide with terror. Isla kept her tone soft. "I'm PC Isla Harper. You're safe, I promise. What's your name?" He hesitated, glancing toward the half-collapsed back wall as if expecting someone to burst through at any second. "Oliver," he whispered. "Oliver Ames." The name landed like a blow. Ashworth Manor Estates. The AME brand. All the missing links tumbling into place. Isla knelt, keeping her hands visible, and spoke as gently as she could. "Oliver, you're the last of the Ashworth family, aren't you?" His chin trembled, but he nodded. "They came at night, said we owed them. My parents tried to fight, but they—" He squeezed his eyes shut, voice cracking. "They killed them, set the house on fire. They took the horses. I only got away because Dad told me to run." Isla felt her throat tighten. She remembered the headlines from years back. House fire, vanished family, rumors about debts and scandal. All of it was a cover. All of it a lie. She leaned forward. "That colt, he's yours, isn't he? The one with the AME brand." Oliver's face twisted, grief and guilt in every line. "He was just a foal then. I marked him myself so I'd always know he was ours. They took all the horses, but I found him later, wandering, half dead. I've been hiding with him ever since, moving from farm to farm, trying to stay ahead of them." He broke off, shoulders shaking. Isla put a steady hand on his arm, letting the silence stretch. When Oliver finally looked up, there was something steely behind the tears. "They have people everywhere," he said, voice raw. "Policemen, lawyers, even some vets. If you help me, they'll come after you too." Isla shook her head. "They already have. But I'm not backing down. You're not alone, anymore." A sharp whinny from the far end of the barn made both of them jump. Isla's flashlight picked out the black colt, muddy, trembling but alive. Relief washed through her. "He found you," she breathed. Oliver nodded. "He always comes back to me. He's the only family I have left." For a moment, Isla knelt beside them, letting her guard down just enough to feel the weight of what had been lost. The world outside the barn was ruthless. But inside, for just a moment, there was a flicker of hope, a survivor, a loyal animal, and a truth that refused to die. But safety was an illusion. The colt nickered, ears pinned. From outside, the crunch of tires on gravel echoed in the darkness. Headlights flared through the broken boards. Oliver froze. "They're here. They always find me." Isla snapped into motion. "Go! Now! Out the back!" She hustled Oliver and the colt toward a rear exit, pushing aside debris. She risked a glance over her shoulder, shadows moving at the barn's entrance, voices low and urgent, beams of flashlight slicing through the gloom. They slipped out into the wet grass, sprinting for the hedge at the edge of the field. Isla shoved Oliver through, hissing, "Stay low!" The colt followed, nearly silent except for his ragged breathing. Gunshots cracked behind them, sharp, echoing in the empty night. Isla ducked instinctively, shoving Oliver ahead. They reached a drainage ditch, scrambled down, breath coming in ragged gasps. Above, the voices drew closer. "You go left," a man shouted, anger in every syllable. "Don't let them reach the village." Isla pulled her phone, thumb shaking as she typed a message to Sloane. "They found us. Need immediate backup. Heading east along the old canal path. 2 hostiles, armed." She stuffed the phone away, heart pounding. She looked at Oliver, who was shivering, face streaked with mud and tears. "You said they killed your parents," she whispered, voice trembling. "Why? What did they want?" Oliver hesitated, searching her face for a sign he could trust her. Then, in a low, desperate rush, he told her everything. They set it all up. The debts, the lawsuits. My father tried to expose them. He found proof they were laundering money through the horse sales, using fake pedigrees, hiding assets offshore. He tried to go to the papers. That's when they came. They killed my parents, and anyone who asked questions just vanished. Even the police wouldn't help. They said it was a house fire, that we ran away to escape our debts. He swallowed, eyes shining in the darkness. I've been running ever since. The only thing that scares them is the colt. He's proof. The brand. The microchip my dad hid in him. It's got everything. Bank codes, names, recordings. They need to get rid of him and me before the truth gets out. Isla felt her resolve crystallize into something sharper than fear. We're not running anymore. We're going to fight back. A low growl from nearby stopped her cold. For a split second, she thought they'd been found, but then a dog, old and gray-muzzled, limped into view. He belonged to the farm next door, and his bark echoed down the ditch, masking their escape. Isla squeezed Oliver's shoulder. "Stay here. I'll draw them off. If I don't come back in 10 minutes, follow the dog. He'll lead you to the village, to Mrs. Cartwright's house. Tell her Isla sent you. She'll know what to do." Oliver shook his head, panic flashing in his eyes. "You'll get killed." Isla forced a smile, though her heart hammered with dread. "I've come too far to stop now. Trust me." She slipped away, looping back toward the barn. She circled wide, moving through the tangled brush, listening for the intruders. She could make out their voices, arguing, frustrated, afraid of what might happen if they failed. She saw the tall man, the signet ring glinting as he gestured furiously at the shorter, stockier one. "She can't have gone far. Find them," he snarled. Isla ducked behind a hay bale, phone ready. She recorded everything, their faces, their threats. Then, when their backs were turned, she hurled a rock at the barn's far wall, sending a crash echoing into the night. Both men spun, running toward the sound. Isla bolted in the opposite direction, circling back to the ditch. She slid down, landing hard beside Oliver and the colt. "They're after us, but they're not smart enough to catch us in the dark," she panted. "We move now. Stay close." Together, the trio crept along the canal path, hearts racing. Behind them, Shouts and curses faded into the night. Ahead, the faint lights of the village shimmered, hope glinting on the horizon. For the first time in years, Oliver allowed himself to believe, just for a moment, that maybe, just maybe, he and the colt would survive. But dawn was still hours away, and Isla knew the fight was far from over. If the killers wanted to end the Ashworth legacy tonight, they would have to come through her. And she was ready. The night air was thick with tension. Every step Isla took weighed down by the expectation of danger. She moved through the overgrown field, Oliver right behind her, one hand gripping the colt's mane as they navigated the uneven ground. The dog, sensing urgency, trotted ahead, occasionally glancing back to make sure his ragtag group was still following. The only sound was the rush of wind through the hedgerows and the distant, angry voices of the men hunting them. The moon was nearly lost behind a tangle of clouds. Isla crouched, motioning for Oliver to stay low. She peered through the darkness, searching for any sign of their pursuers. Her heart thudded in her chest. The colt was spooked, his breaths coming fast and ragged. Oliver squeezed his eyes shut, whispering, "It's okay. You're okay." A flashlight beam swept the edge of the field, slicing across their path for one heart-stopping second before flicking away. Isla felt her stomach clench. They had seconds, maybe less. Gunfire cracked, sharp and sudden. Splinters of wood exploded from a fence post just feet away. Isla yanked Oliver and the colt behind the thick trunk of an old oak. Bullets tore through the night, the men shouting. "Over there! Don't let them get away!" She pressed herself flat to the ground. "We move on my signal," she whispered, her breath fogging in the cold air. "Stay with me, both of you." The dog barked again, a decoy in the other direction, drawing some of the men away. Isla waited, counted to 3, then sprang up, dragging Oliver along. They sprinted across the open ground, hooves pounding, breath coming in panicked bursts. Isla's muscles burned, but adrenaline kept her moving. A shadow loomed ahead, the old stone wall marking the boundary of Ashworth's back pasture. Isla shoved Oliver over, then turned to help the colt. The animal balked, eyes wild, but then he gathered himself and jumped, clearing the wall by inches. Isla scrambled over after him, her hands scraped and bleeding, knees caked in mud. From behind, more gunshots rang out, the sound echoing off the hills. The men had split up, one group circling around, another crashing through the underbrush. Isla spotted the glint of tactical gear, the telltale shape of earpieces. These weren't common thugs. They moved like soldiers. She hustled Oliver and the colt across a narrow footbridge spanning a black, swirling creek. The boards groaned under their weight. Halfway across, a shout. One of the men, signet ring glinting even in the moonlight, appeared at the far end. "There's nowhere left to run." His voice was raw with fury. Isla raised her gun. "One more step, and I drop you where you stand." He hesitated, and Isla used the moment to rush her group across the bridge. She fired a warning shot into the planks, sending splinters flying. The man dove for cover as Isla, Oliver, and the colt dashed into the woods beyond. They plunged into tangled undergrowth, branches tearing at their clothes. The colt stumbled, sides heaving, but pressed on, keeping close to Isla. Oliver was silent, face white with terror and determination. Behind them, the men regrouped, barking orders into radios. "They're cutting us off," Isla panted, skidding to a halt at a break in the trees. She glanced at Oliver, who nodded grimly. The dog limped ahead, nose to the ground, leading them in a wide arc around the men's position. Suddenly, headlights flared ahead, the Range Rover, its engine snarling, blocking the only open path to the main road. 2 more men stepped out, armed and grim. One opened the rear hatch. "Put the boy and the horse in here. Leave the woman for Charles." Isla's blood ran cold. She scanned the woods for any way out. The only option was down, a steep embankment leading toward the river wharf, its waters raging after the spring rains. She made the decision in a heartbeat. "Oliver, can you swim?" He nodded, though fear flickered in his eyes. "I think so. We don't have a choice. On my count, we're going over. Trust me." The men advanced, guns raised. "Hands up! Now!" Isla yanked Oliver and the colt back, then shouted, "Go!" Together, they crashed through the brush, sliding and stumbling down the muddy slope. Bullets tore past, kicking up dirt and stones. The roar of the river filled Isla's ears. At the bottom, without hesitation, she grabbed Oliver's hand and leapt, the colt bounding after them, a black shadow against the night. The cold was a shock, water swallowing them whole. Isla surfaced, gasping. She fought the current, holding tight to Oliver. The colt thrashed, then found footing on a submerged stone, head barely above water. Above, the men shouted in frustration. Shots rang out, ricocheting off rocks. Isla ducked, pulling Oliver under, the current dragging them downstream. For a terrifying moment, Isla lost hold of the boy. Her heart nearly stopped. But then the colt surged forward, nudging Oliver with his nose, guiding him toward a tangle of overhanging branches. Isla kicked, adrenaline screaming in her veins, until her feet touched bottom. She hauled Oliver up, spluttering, the colt climbing out beside them, sides heaving. They collapsed on the far bank, hidden from view by tall reeds. Isla lay flat, chest heaving. She listened, shouts on the other side, but no one daring to follow them into the freezing water. The colt pressed against Oliver, nuzzling his cheek. Oliver clung to the animal, tears streaming down his face, not from fear this time, but relief. Isla let herself breathe, her entire body shaking. "Are you all right?" she managed, voice rough. Oliver nodded. "I thought we were dead." "Not today," Isla said, forcing a weak smile. They huddled together, letting the river's noise drown out the fear. Isla checked her phone. Miraculously, it still worked, though the screen was cracked and slick with river water. She texted Sloane. "We escaped. Across wharf. They're armed. Military gear. Send help to downstream side." She tucked the phone away and listened. The men had regrouped, searching for a way across, arguing among themselves. One voice, chilling in its calm, cut through the chaos. "No more mistakes. We find them. Tonight." The trio moved further along the riverbank, keeping to the shadows. The colt seemed to sense the urgency, staying close, ears swiveling at every sound. Oliver stumbled, but Isla caught him, refusing to let go. A shape loomed ahead, an old boathouse, half collapsed but still standing. Isla led the way, ducking inside. It smelled of mildew and rot, but it offered shelter. They huddled together, silent except for their ragged breaths. Oliver broke the silence first, voice barely a whisper. "Why won't they stop? What are they afraid of?" Isla looked at the boy, then at the colt. "You, him, the truth your family tried to protect, whatever they're hiding, it's worth killing for." Thunder rumbled outside, the storm returning. Isla peered through a crack in the boards, eyes scanning the river for any sign of their pursuers. "We're not out of this yet," she said, determination flaring anew. "But we have something they don't, each other." As the first drops of rain battered the boathouse roof, the colt pressed close to Oliver, the bond between them their last defense against the dark. Isla kept watch, pistol at the ready, jaw set. The night was far from over. The conspiracy's hunters still prowled the countryside, their resources vast, their reach chilling. But Isla Harper, Oliver, and the black colt had survived the impossible together, and that was a beginning. Outside, the river raged. Inside, hope flickered stubbornly on. The storm battered the old boathouse, rain drumming on warped shingles as the river thundered nearby. Isla sat against the rotten wall, her pistol resting in her lap, listening to the wind. Oliver and the colt huddled together in the dim corner, their breaths visible in the chilly air. Isla checked her phone again. Still no reply from Sloane. The message, "Help, East Riverbank, urgent," hanging in the digital void. Either the network was down or someone was keeping help from reaching them. Outside, the Range Rover's headlights flickered through the trees, beams darting back and forth, prowling the muddy track along the water. The men were closing in, voices drifting on the wind. Too far for words, close enough for threat. Isla's mind raced through options. Run for the village, try to hide in the woods, make a stand here. None of them felt like survival. A sudden silence settled. The shouting stopped, the headlights turned off. Isla's skin prickled. She forced herself to stand, steadying her breath. Oliver clung to the colt, eyes wide. "What's happening?" he whispered. Isla shook her head. "Stay behind me. If I tell you to run, run to the water and keep low." Footsteps approached. Deliberate, slow, boots crunching on gravel. Then, without warning, a single sharp rap on the boathouse door. "Miss Harper, I know you're in there." The voice was deep, commanding, every syllable measured. Isla's blood ran cold. She recognized that confidence, that air of untouchability. This was the man from the phone, the name she'd only seen in whispers on the documents. Sir Charles Thornfield? She didn't respond, but the door opened anyway. A tall figure stepped into the weak glow of Isla's flashlight. Immaculately dressed in a dark tailored suit, silver hair swept back, his presence filling the cramped room. Behind him, 2 bodyguards flanked the door, arms crossed. Thornfield surveyed the scene with an air of disdain. His eyes landed first on Isla, then Oliver, then the colt. A slow, almost bored smile crossed his face. So this is the legendary Ashworth bloodline, reduced to a frightened boy and a muddy horse. I must admit, Harper, I expected you to put up more of a fight. Isla gripped her pistol, not lowering it an inch. You're trespassing. Walk away while you still can. He laughed softly, shaking his head. Put the gun down. If I wanted you dead, you'd already be gone. I came to offer you a choice. I suggest you listen. Isla's jaw clenched, but she kept her weapon raised. Thornfield stepped further inside, the bodyguards remaining by the door, blocking any escape. Let's not pretend, officer. You already know what I am, who I represent. All of this, he gestured to the soaked, ruined world outside, is nothing but a game. You're a clever girl, but you've wandered into a lion's den. Oliver's voice was a trembling thread. Why did you kill my parents? Thornfield glanced at him, almost amused. Your father was a man of principle, noble in his way, but he forgot that power is not given, it's taken, and kept by any means. He thought he could expose us. Foolish, Isla snapped. Us. Who's us? The Ashworths built this community. You destroyed it. He met her eyes, cold and clear. You think this is about horses and land? It was never about the estate or the bloodline. It's about what the Ashworths found, the ledger, the offshore codes, the names. They got greedy. They tried to bargain. I simply corrected their mistake. The wind rattled the windows, thunder booming. Isla felt the full weight of the conspiracy settle on her shoulders. This wasn't just about rural corruption. Thornfield was connected to everything. Banks, government, even the police. The world shrank, hope withering. He continued, voice even colder. You've made yourself a problem, Harper, but I'm not without mercy. Walk away, leave the boy, the horse, the files. I'll see to it that you get a commendation. Maybe even a promotion. Or, he let the word hang, the threat filling the space. Isla steadied herself. You want to make another family disappear? Thornfield's eyes hardened. I want to maintain order. You and the boy are the only loose ends. The colt is just a symbol, a rallying point for people who still believe in justice. Isla's hand tightened on the pistol. You're not invincible, Charles. The world's changed. People will listen. He smiled, pulling out a phone, tapping the screen. The world listens to money, Isla. To power. You're a footnote in my history. As if to prove his point, her own phone buzzed. A single text from a blocked number. Your partner has been reassigned. No help is coming. Isla's heart dropped. The net was closing. She tried to think, to stall for time. Oliver's voice broke the silence. My dad hid proof. In the colt, a microchip, a recorder. It's all there, everything you've done. Thornfield's gaze turned to ice. You're bluffing. Isla shook her head. He's not. I found the vet reports. If anything happens to us, the evidence goes public. We've already sent copies to the press, to the authorities. For the first time, Thornfield faltered. A flicker of uncertainty. But then his smile returned, more predatory now. You're still here. You're still afraid. That's all I need. He gestured to the bodyguards. Bring the boy. Secure the horse. If the officer resists, end it. The bodyguards advanced. Isla raised her pistol, finger trembling. Back off! A moment of chaos. The colt reared. Oliver screamed. One bodyguard lunged. Isla fired, a warning shot shattering a window. Glass exploded. Wind howled in. Thornfield snarled, "Get them!" Oliver dove beneath the colt, who lashed out, kicking one guard in the knee. Isla scrambled, gun swinging, heart pounding. The second guard tackled her, sending her sprawling. Her weapon skittered away into the shadows. Thornfield stood calm amid the violence, watching like a judge. You see, all your courage, all your bluster, it means nothing. Isla fought, kicking and punching, twisting free long enough to grab Oliver's hand. Run, now! The colt led the charge, barreling through the guards, Oliver clinging to his mane. Isla scrambled after them, the chaos behind them erupting into shouting and curses. They burst into the rain, slipping and sliding down the riverbank. Bullets whizzed past, hitting mud and water. Isla grabbed Oliver, dragging him along the shoreline, the colt never far away. Behind them, Thornfield's voice bellowed in the storm. Find them! Do not let them reach the village! They scrambled through the wet undergrowth, fear and adrenaline mixing into one frantic rush. Isla looked at Oliver, soaked, terrified, but alive. We keep moving. He can't control everything, not forever. The river roared beside them, lightning flashing overhead. They could hear the hunters behind, boots pounding, voices cursing, phones barking orders. But ahead was freedom. Ahead was hope, no matter how thin. As they disappeared into the trees, Isla's resolve hardened. Thornfield might own the system. He might command an army, but he would never break their will to survive, or the bond between a boy and his horse. For the first time, she truly believed it. They could win. Rain hammered the trees, the world reduced to blurred streaks of silver and shadow. Isla ran until her lungs burned, boots slipping in the mud, her only thought to keep moving, keep Oliver and the colt ahead of her, away from Thornfield's men. Each breath was a battle. Each heartbeat screamed, run, faster, don't stop, don't look back. Behind them, the shouts grew closer, flashlights swept the woods, beams slicing through branches, catching on rain-soaked leaves and glinting off the colt's black coat. Isla risked a glance back. Two men in tactical gear were crashing through the brush, their footsteps merciless. She grabbed Oliver's hand. This way! Keep low! The colt pressed beside them, as if sensing the terror, guiding them through tangled roots and mossy stones. Oliver stumbled, breath hitching. Isla hauled him upright, refusing to let go. Almost there. We're almost there. They burst out of the trees onto the open riverbank. The river wharf raged before them, brown water swollen and wild, swirling with the runoff of the night's storms. The only crossing was the shattered remains of an old footbridge, half its planks missing, the rest slick and treacherous. Isla scanned the far bank, just a few hundred feet of open ground, then the safety of the village lights shimmering in the distance, blurred by sheets of rain. Hope flared, fierce and desperate. But the Range Rover's headlights reappeared, slicing across the water from upstream. Doors slammed. More men fanned out along the bank, boxing them in. Thornfield's voice carried across the roar of the river, calm and cruel. It's over, Harper. You can't run anymore. Surrender the boy and the colt, and this ends peacefully. Oliver shrank behind Isla, clutching the colt's mane. We can't go back. I won't. Isla stepped in front, shielding him. She shouted, voice raw, Stay back. I swear, if you come any closer. Gunshots cracked, wood splintering at her feet. The men advanced, methodical, weapons raised. Isla's eyes darted to the river, raging, deadly, unforgiving. Behind them, nowhere to hide. Ahead, only the water. She crouched, gripping Oliver's shoulders, forcing him to look at her. Do you trust me? He nodded, tears mixing with rain on his face. We have to jump. All of us. Oliver's eyes went wide, terror and hope warring inside him. The colt seemed to understand, nostrils flaring, hooves digging into the mud. Bullets hit the trees, bark exploding. Isla squeezed Oliver's hand, her voice breaking. Now! They ran for the river's edge. Isla leapt first, pulling Oliver with her, the colt right behind, launching into the air, a dark shadow against the storm-lit sky. For one breathless instant, the world held its breath. Then they crashed into the icy water, cold shock, tumbling darkness, the world spinning. Isla fought to the surface, gulping air. The current dragged her downstream, swallowing her cries. She flailed, searching for Oliver. Panic clawed her chest. "Oliver!" A splash. Then the colt's head broke the water beside her, wild eyes rolling, fighting the current. A smaller hand grabbed Isla's wrist. Oliver, choking, gasping. She hooked her arm around him, kicking furiously. Bullets ripped into the river, sending geysers of water skyward. Thornfield's men lined the bank, shouting orders, unable to shoot clearly in the chaos. Isla ignored them, focusing on the far shore, so close, yet impossibly far. The colt surged ahead, muscles straining, cutting through the current like he'd done it 1,000 times. He reached Oliver, nudging him upright, pushing him toward Isla. Together, they fought the river, lungs burning, arms aching, hearts pounding. A fallen tree loomed in the water, a moment's chance. Isla grabbed a branch, hauling herself and Oliver out of the worst of the current. The colt scrambled onto the trunk, nostrils flaring, shaking with exhaustion. Isla coughed, water streaming down her face. "You okay?" Oliver nodded, teeth chattering, but alive. They clung to the log, the river roaring around them, Thornfield's men still searching the near bank, lights darting across the foam. For a heartbeat, Isla let herself believe they'd done it, that they'd survived the impossible. Then she saw the glint, a waterproof pouch tied to the colt's halter, bobbing in the water. She reached for it, hands numb, fingers shaking. Inside, nestled in plastic, was a small digital recorder and a microchip. Oliver's father's evidence, everything Thornfield and his men had killed to erase. Tears stung Isla's eyes, but she pushed them away. "We have to keep moving," she rasped. "We're not safe yet." With the last of their strength, the trio crawled along the trunk, making their way to the far bank. Isla dragged Oliver out of the water, then turned to help the colt, who heaved himself onto the mud, legs trembling but unbroken. They collapsed in the grass, breathless, half laughing, half crying, the river between them and their hunters. Isla rolled onto her back, staring up at the stormy sky, rain falling on her face. She let out a choked laugh. "We made it! I can't believe it!" Oliver hugged the colt, sobbing with relief. For the first time in years, he was safe, truly safe, if only for a moment. Behind them, Thornfield's men raged at the water's edge, unable to follow, powerless in the face of nature's fury. Thornfield himself stood alone, suit soaked, face twisted in rage. He hurled his phone into the river, shouting, "Find them! I want that evidence!" Isla struggled to her knees, clutching the pouch. The recorder's tiny red light blinked. A heartbeat, a promise. She turned to Oliver. "Your father did it. He hid the truth where no one could reach it but you." Oliver nodded, wiping his eyes. He said, "If I ever made it out, I had to tell someone. I had to keep fighting." A siren wailed in the distance. Real this time. Police cars, blue lights slashing through the rain, approaching from the village. Isla grinned, exhausted but triumphant. We're not alone anymore. As the headlights grew brighter, Thornfield's men scattered, vanishing into the woods. Isla, Oliver, and the colt stood together, battered and soaked, but alive. They had proof. They had each other. And at last, they had a future. For a moment, they watched the river, feeling the weight lift. The water rushed on, washing away fear, secrets, and the darkness of the past. Isla wrapped an arm around Oliver's shoulders, the colt nudging them both, his eyes bright in the storm. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved us." Oliver shook his head. "We all did. Together." And somewhere, deep in the heart of the countryside, hope began to rise, unstoppable, undeniable, shining through even the blackest night. Blue police lights painted the riverbank in flashes of color, sirens echoing through the rain-soaked village. Isla leaned against the colt, her arms still wrapped around Oliver's trembling shoulders. Exhaustion made her limbs heavy, but she didn't let herself collapse. She kept her eyes fixed on the officers as they ran toward her, real, solid, unmistakably on her side at last. Detective Sloane was first to reach them, coat flapping in the wind, His eyes went wide at the sight, Isla soaked and mud-caked, Oliver clutching the colt's mane, the small waterproof pouch clutched in Isla's hand. "Are you hurt?" Sloane shouted over the roar of the river. Isla shook her head, a tired grin tugging at her lips. "We're alive. That's enough." The other officers fanned out, searching the riverbank, scanning the woods. They'd find nothing but Thornfield's men scattering like rats, leaving behind only footprints and shell casings. But Isla knew. This time, the hunters were the ones on the run. Sloane's eyes darted to the pouch. "Is that?" Isla nodded. "It's everything. Audio, documents, codes, proof of who paid for the Ashworth fire, the bribes, the disappearances, Thornfield's entire network. He tried to kill for it." Sloane let out a breath, the weight of years of unsolved cases settling on his face. "We'll need to get you to the station. And the boy, he's the last Ashworth," Isla said quietly. "He's going nowhere without me. Or the colt." Sloane nodded. "Understood." The walk back to the waiting police van was surreal. Every step a march towards something Isla wasn't sure she believed in anymore. Justice. Sloane assigned a team to guard Oliver and the colt, another to secure the evidence. The village was waking up now, faces pressed to windows, whispers already starting, questions about the gunshots, the sirens, the battered horse, and the survivors limping through the mud. At the station, everything happened in a blur. Isla gave her statement, voice hoarse but unwavering. She described the threats, the bribes, the attacks in the field, and at the vets. She told them about the manor, the hidden cameras, the broken cufflink with the AME crest. She described Thornfield, his arrogance, his threats, the men who answered his call without question. Oliver sat beside her, hands never leaving the colt's neck. The animal stood in a makeshift pen behind the station, eating apples given by a kind-faced officer who couldn't believe such a creature had survived so much. The real breakthrough came when Sloane's text cracked the microchip from the pouch. It was all there, dozens of recordings, names, dates, payments, calls between Thornfield and city officials, orders to erase evidence, instructions for laundering money through sham horse sales and offshore accounts. There were even photos, the same Range Rover, the same men from the riverbank, faces clear as day. News broke like a flood. By morning, BBC cameras swarmed the village, reporters jostling for a glimpse of the last Ashworth. "Survivor of Ashworth tragedy breaks silence," the headline screamed. "Police arrest Thornfield in countrywide raid." Calloway, the second-in-command, was dragged from his estate in handcuffs, his empire of shell companies crumbling overnight. Court proceedings moved fast, the evidence overwhelming. Thornfield tried to hide behind lawyers, to use his money and connections one last time, but the world was watching. Isla testified, her words calm and clear. Oliver sat in the front row, his face pale but proud, the colt's photo clutched in his hands. One by one, the guilty fell. The judge's gavel echoed like thunder. The country learned how deep the rot went, how close they'd come to losing everything to greed, violence, and silence. Families who'd lost loved ones came forward, tears streaming down their faces, grateful at last for truth. And through it all, Isla never left Oliver's side. After the sentencing, there was a strange, beautiful quiet. The storm had passed. The air was clear, washed clean by rain and justice. Ashworth Manor stood silent, its stones still scarred by the years of darkness. But something changed. Restoration crews moved in, windows repaired, gardens untangled, the great hall filled with light again. A new sign hung above the gate. Ashworth Foundation. Rescue, healing, hope. Oliver was there on opening day, standing beside Isla and the colt. The press snapped photos as he cut the ribbon, his smile shy but real. Children from the village laughed, feeding apples to the horses, learning about courage, survival, and forgiveness. The colt became a symbol, not just of endurance, but of the power of truth. He wore his brand with pride now, the letters AME shining in the sun. Isla was promoted Detective Inspector Harper, the youngest in her division. But when the ceremony ended, she slipped away from the crowd, Finding Oliver in the old stable, the colt at his side, she leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "How does it feel?" Oliver grinned, brushing the colt's mane. "Like coming home. For the first time in years." She smiled, feeling the knot of grief and anger inside her finally start to loosen. "Your parents would be proud, Oliver." He nodded, eyes shining. "We did it. You, me, him. We didn't give up." She crouched beside them, ruffling the colt's mane. "We're family now, the three of us." Oliver laughed, the sound light and free. "I wouldn't want it any other way." As the sun broke through the clouds, casting gold over the fields, Isla stood with Oliver and the colt, watching as new volunteers arrived. More kids, more horses, more stories waiting to be told. She realized the world hadn't just been saved for one boy, or one horse, or even for herself. It was for everyone who'd ever been told to keep quiet, to look away, to let the powerful do as they pleased. It was for justice, for redemption, for hope. And as the breeze lifted, carrying laughter and promise across the Yorkshire hills, Isla closed her eyes and breathed deep, knowing this was only the beginning. If you ever doubt what courage can do, remember the Ashworth colt, the last survivor, and the people who risked everything to keep him safe. Remember that the truth, once set free, can never be erased.